They wore the Mustang badge, they roared like legends, but under the sheet metal, these cars were the punchlines Ford hoped you'd forget. Today, we're dragging 5 of the dumbest Mustangs ever built into the spotlight. Some were underpowered, overpriced, or just plain bizarre. And the worst part? You've probably never even heard of them. So buckle up, because by the time we hit number 1, you might never look at the Mustang logo the same way again. In this episode of Top 5 Muscle Cars, we're digging up the most misguided Mustangs Ford ever built, the ones that made enthusiasts groan and historians scratch their heads. From turbocharged flops to luxury land yachts, these cars didn't just miss the target, they forgot which direction to aim. Some tried to be sporty, some tried to be classy, most failed at both. But each of them holds a weird, fascinating place in Mustang history, not because they succeeded, but because they didn't. Top 5 1974 Mustang 2 Ghia Luxury, the Mustang that forgot it was a Mustang. It wore the Mustang badge like a costume, but underneath, it was something else entirely. Something slower, softer, and almost unrecognizable. In 1974, just a decade after the Mustang had kicked off a performance revolution, Ford released a version so tame, so refined, it made muscle car fans do a double take. This wasn't the Mustang charging through time, it was the Mustang hitting the brakes, putting on makeup, and asking to speak to the manager. This is the bizarre story of the 1974 Mustang 2 Ghia Luxury, the plush pony car that lost its bite, and maybe its identity. To understand the Mustang 2 Ghia, you need to rewind the clock to the early 70s. The muscle car party was ending. Gas prices were climbing fast. Insurance companies were penalizing high horsepower youthmobiles, and looming behind it all was the hammer of government regulations. Emission rules, safety laws, and the dreaded smog pumps. Ford knew the original Mustang, once wild and roaring with V8 pride, couldn't survive this new world without a radical change. So in 1974, the company hit reset. They downsized, literally. They built the Mustang 2 on the Pinto platform. Yes, the Pinto. And instead of doubling down on performance, Ford steered into comfort. Enter the Ghia, a trim package that turned the Mustang into a wannabe luxury coupe. It had padded vinyl roofs, opera windows, chrome accents, plush velour interiors, simulated wood grain dashboards. It was part Italian boutique, part 1970s retirement home. Under the hood, you had a 2.3L inline-4 that coughed out 88 horsepower, or if you were feeling spicy, a 2.8L V6 with 105 HP. No V8, no muscle, just meh. And here's the kicker, people bought it. A lot of people. Despite its lackluster performance, the Mustang 2 was a hit. It helped the Mustang survive when its muscle-bound siblings were dropping like flies. While other automakers clung to dying big blocks, Ford gave America a smaller, more sensible pony car. The Ghia trim, bizarrely enough, became one of the most popular versions. Buyers loved the quiet ride, the upscale feel, and the fuel economy. All things the original Mustang didn't even pretend to offer. It was named Motor Trend's 1974 Car of the Year, a decision that aged about as well as bell-bottoms and avocado kitchen appliances. But with every Ghia sold, something sacred faded. The Ghia wasn't just a disappointment, it was a branding crisis. To enthusiasts, the Mustang was supposed to be raw, rebellious, and a little dangerous. The Ghia, on the other hand, was trying to be a baby Lincoln. Its sluggish acceleration, soft suspension, and pillow-like ride made it completely unrecognizable to fans of the original fastbacks. The muscle car crowd mocked it. Performance magazines ignored it. Collectors still debate whether it deserves the Mustang name at all. Yet Ford doubled down, offering more colors, more vinyl, and even more Ghia packages in the years that followed. The Mustang, once a statement of youth and horsepower, was now a safe, sedate cruiser that prioritized ride quality over red lines. And while the Ghia may have saved the Mustang's sales numbers, it nearly erased its soul. But here's the strangest part. If the Ghia hadn't existed, the Mustang name might have died altogether. So was the 1974 Mustang 2 Ghia a betrayal of everything the badge stood for, or the unlikely hero that kept it alive long enough to be reborn? Stick around, because the next Mustang on our list didn't just lose its muscle, it lost its mind entirely. Top 4, 1980 Mustang Cobra Turbo, the silent backfire of the turbo revolution. By 1980, muscle was dead, or at least it was on life support. The once proud era of big blocks and burnout smoke had been silenced by leaded gas bans, emissions controls, and skyrocketing insurance premiums. So what did Ford do to keep the Mustang's heart beating? They bolted on a turbo, gave it a snake badge, and whispered to a disillusioned America, "This is the future." But that whisper, it never became a roar. This is the story of the 1980 Mustang Cobra Turbo, the car that tried to save the Mustang brand with a hiss, but ended up choking on its own boost. When the Fox body Mustang arrived in 1979, Ford was ready to turn a new page. The new Mustang was smaller, lighter, and sleeker. It wasn't trying to relive the glory days of the 60S. It was aiming for something modern, something efficient, something turbocharged. That's where the 2.3L turbocharged inline-4 came in. This little four-banger was supposed to be Ford's answer to the V8 drought. It was cutting edge for the time. A compact engine with a turbo made it to either a 4-speed manual or automatic, sending power to the rear wheels in a lightweight coupe. In theory, it could be brilliant, nimble, balanced, and surprisingly quick. Ford marketed the 1980 Mustang Cobra Turbo as the performance halo of the Mustang lineup. It had aggressive striping, blacked-out trim, and a forward-facing hood scoop. Non-functional, but who was checking, Cobra, was plastered across the doors. It looked like a predator ready to pounce. And for a split second, America believed. But then the numbers came out. 132 horsepower. Yes, just 132. That's barely more than a modern economy car. On paper, the 1980 Cobra Turbo looked fast. But in practice, it was slower than some station wagons. The turbo lag was atrocious. Push the pedal and wait. And wait. Then, maybe, if the planets aligned and the engine wasn't heat-soaked, the boost would arrive with a polite nudge. And it wasn't just slow, it was finicky. The carbureted turbo setup was a nightmare to tune. It didn't have an intercooler, it didn't have reliable engine management. What it had was heat, detonation, and confusion. And that scoop on the hood? A complete fake, just cosmetic. It didn't feed air into the turbo, didn't reduce temperatures. It was all for show. A Cobra that didn't bite. A turbo that didn't spool. A Mustang that couldn't outrun its own reputation. The backlash was swift. Buyers felt betrayed. Mustang fans mocked it. And the media wasn't kind. Car magazines called it underwhelming. Drivers complained of sputtering performance, awkward handling, and disappointing straight-liner speed. The worst part? The Cobra name, once associated with Carroll Shelby's tire-shredding V8S, was now slapped onto a slow, shaky 4-cylinder embarrassment. Ford's gamble backfired. Not only did the 1980 Cobra Turbo fail to restore performance credibility, it actually hurt the image of turbocharging in the American market. For years afterward, turbo became synonymous with temperamental, underpowered, or just plain bad. By 1981, Ford tried tweaking the turbo system, but the damage was done. Few people were interested. The Cobra badge quietly disappeared again. But this wasn't just a failure, it was a missed opportunity. A car that tried to speak a new language of performance, but stuttered so badly, nobody wanted to listen again. And yet, from this failure came the seeds of something better. Because in the shadows of the Cobra Turbo's downfall, a new force was quietly rising. A boxy coupe with a better engine, better response, and a badge that would finally make Mustang fans believe again. The 1980 Cobra Turbo stumbled. But the 1985 SVO would strike back. Top 3, 1994 Mustang GT Convertible. Base auto, the drop-top disaster Ford wants you to forget. 1994 was supposed to mark the rebirth of a legend. After 15 years of angular Fox body Mustangs, Ford dropped a bombshell, the SN95 Mustang. It had curves, it had presence, it had that finally the Mustang is back energy. On paper, the 1994 Mustang GT Convertible had it all. Iconic looks, a 5L V8, and the promise of open-air thrills. But when the dust settled, one version stood out, for all the wrong reasons. The base automatic convertible. It looked like muscle, but behind the badge, it was more style than substance. And for Mustang fans, that hurt. Let's back up. The early 90s were a strange time for American performance. Insurance companies had killed the brute force muscle of the 60S. Emissions rules neutered the big blocks. Imports like the Supra and 300ZX were starting to show up to the fight with high revving precision. Though Ford made a bet, blend classic design with modern comfort. The result was the SN95 Mustang, riding on a heavily modified Fox platform and dressed to impress. The GT trim came with the tried and true 5L pushrod V8, 215 horsepower and 285 pound-feet of torque. It sounded good, it looked great, and with a manual transmission in coupe form, it ran the quarter mile in the low 15s. Solid. But then came the convertible, with an automatic, and the whole illusion fell apart. You'd think that a 5V8 would be a guaranteed thrill, but pairing it with the outdated 4-speed automatic was like handing a sledgehammer to a ballerina. It just didn't fit. Shifts were slow, gear ratios weren't optimized for performance. The result? A car that looked fast but couldn't outrun a V6 Camry in a straight line. Real-world tests told the truth. 0-60 mph in 7.5 seconds. Quarter mile in a sluggish 15.8 seconds. That's barely above average, and nowhere near what buyers expected from a GT. Worse, the convertible top added weight and compromised the chassis. Body flex was real. You could feel the cowl shake every time you hit a bump. The extra 200 pounds dulled handling and turned spirited drives into floaty cruises. This wasn't a muscle car. It was a beach cruiser in disguise. The automotive press wasn't fooled. Reviewers called it underwhelming, bland, and more bark than bite. Mustang enthusiasts? Disappointed. This was supposed to be a return to form, a comeback tour. Instead, it felt like Ford was hedging its bets, offering style and nostalgia without the commitment to performance. Ford had tried to please everyone, a comfy ride for casual drivers, decent power for the spec sheet, and good looks for showroom floors. But in doing so, they alienated the purists. Worse still, the GT convertible became the Mustang of choice for people who didn't care about performance. Rental fleets loved it. Retirees bought it. It became that Mustang, the one you saw at stoplights, revving loudly but going nowhere fast. And let's not forget the sound system Ford hyped in brochures. Sure, you got a CD player and leather seats, but the only thing worse than hearing slow shifts, hearing them while blasting Pearl Jam in a chassis that rattled like a drawer full of forks. But Ford wasn't done screwing things up just yet. Because right after the soft, sluggish convertible came another Mustang, one with turbocharged ambition and an identity crisis that made this car look like a genius in hindsight. The 1980S were calling, and they had a Mustang even stranger. Top 2, 2004 Mustang V6, 40th Anniversary Edition. The birthday cake with no candles. You'd expect Ford to mark the Mustang's 40th birthday with something bold, a flame-spitting tribute, a throwback to 1965, or maybe even a limited-run beast that screamed muscle. Instead, we got chrome trim, beige accents, and 190 horsepower. This wasn't just a missed opportunity. It was an identity crisis on wheels, a celebration that showed up late, underdressed, and without a gift. Let's rewind to 2004. The Mustang name was about to evolve. The S197 retro revival was on the horizon, promising a rebirth of everything enthusiasts loved. But before the curtain could rise on that act, Ford had one last encore with the SN95 platform. Enter the 2004 Mustang 40th Anniversary Edition. It looked festive enough. Crimson red paint, Arizona beige rocker stripes, special badging, and an exclusive leather interior if you picked the right package. On the surface, it wore the outfit of a proper birthday party. But under that party hat was the same tired 3.8 LV6 that had been dragging Mustangs along since the early 90s. And the kicker? The vast majority sold were base model V6s with automatic transmissions. That's right, While the GT variant was available and offered a bit more bite, most of these special editions were just the rental spec-base Mustangs, gussied up with fake scoops, non-functional hood ornaments, and a dash badge. It was all show and no go. The specs were dismal. 190 horsepower, 220 pound-feet of torque, 4-speed automatic, 0-60 in 7.6 seconds, quarter mile in a sleepy 15.9. But numbers alone didn't kill the mood, it was the experience. The engine wheezed like a tired vacuum cleaner. The suspension wallowed through turns. The exhaust tips were fake. Even the hood scoop was cosmetic. And the worst part? The 40th anniversary badge, the very thing meant to inspire Mustang pride, became a symbol of marketing fluff. Enthusiasts didn't salute it. They laughed at it. Instead of honoring a legend, the V6 40th anniversary Mustang confused buyers and diluted the brand. You owners were disappointed, collectors ignored it, and performance fans, they asked, "This is how you celebrate 40 years of Mustang?" Meanwhile, the 2005 Mustang was waiting in the wings, sharper, meaner, and genuinely exciting. That made the 2004 Celebration model feel even more awkward. It was like throwing a farewell party before the real hero showed up. Ford tried to coast on nostalgia. But nostalgia without substance? It's just bad theater. And in the case of the 40th anniversary V6 Mustang, it was a show with plastic props and no climax. But if you thought this was the lowest point in Mustang's special edition history, think again. Because coming up next, a turbocharged 80S Cobra that promised futuristic performance and delivered an undercooked disaster. Top 1. 1971 Mustang Grande 250 i6. The Mustang that forgot it was a Mustang. Imagine walking into a Ford dealership in 1971, heart set on the raw power and rebellion of a Mustang, and leaving with a car that felt more like a rolling recliner than a tire-smoking street weapon. That's the story of the 1971 Mustang Grande, with the 250 cubic inch inline 6, a car that tried to bring luxury to the muscle game, and instead forgot why people loved Mustangs in the first place. To understand how this happened, we need to rewind to the early 70s. The Mustang was evolving, growing longer, heavier, and cushier. Lee Iacocca's original pony car, compact, nimble, youthful, had turned into something more bloated, more Buick than badass. And the Grande? That was Ford's idea of elevating the Mustang to near luxury territory. They slapped on a padded vinyl roof, added extra chrome, upgraded the interior with fake wood and sound deadening, and wrapped it all in a softer, quieter ride. It was meant to attract a more mature buyer. But under the hood of this supposed upscale stallion was a 250 cubic inch inline 6, making a tepid 145 horsepower. Let that sink in. A Mustang, with the same engine they stuffed into Ford Mavericks and pickup trucks. The worst part? Many Grande buyers actually thought they were getting something premium. It looked stately, it sounded impressive in the brochure. But when you put your foot down, nothing happened. 0-60? Nearly 13 seconds. Quarter mile? You'd have time to check your watch and take a sip of coffee before it finished. Even worse, this engine came mated to a 3-speed automatic that sucked every ounce of urgency from the drivetrain. This wasn't just slow, it was demoralizing. And while the exterior styling of the 71 Mustang was polarizing, the Grande's touches, opera windows, white wall tires, padded vinyl roof, pushed it fully into grandpa territory. Performance enthusiasts mocked it. Young buyers ignored it. Even Mustang loyalists were left scratching their heads. It was as if Ford had taken the Mustang brand, the symbol of American youth and rebellion, and turned it into a cushy compromise car for someone who really wanted a Thunderbird, but settled for less. And the damage went deeper than just one model. The Grande was emblematic of a larger problem. The Mustang had lost its way. By 1971, the lineup was bloated, confused, and burdened by trim levels that catered to everyone and pleased no one. But here's the kicker. Despite all its flaws, the Grande sold. Why? Because buyers were confused. The badge still said Mustang, the ad still played rock music. But under the vinyl roof and behind the chrome trim was a car with no real identity. And for every Mustang sold with a V8 and a 4-speed, there were dozens of Grandes trickling off dealer lots, silent, sluggish, and forgettable. The 1971 Mustang Grande didn't go out in a blaze of glory. It faded out like a forgotten ballad on an AM radio. But maybe that's the saddest part. It wasn't a failure because it tried something bold. It failed because it forgot what it was supposed to be. A Mustang, with no muscle, no roar, and no reason to remember it. Because sometimes the quietest cars leave the loudest questions. How do you take a legend and turn it into background noise? And just like that, we've reached the end of the road. These Ford Mustangs weren't just missteps, they were cautionary tales, proof that even icons can lose their way when the soul gets traded for sale sheets and the roar gets muffled by marketing. But here's the silver lining: history remembers the mistakes and learns from them. And sometimes, the dumbest decisions lead to the boldest comebacks. If you enjoyed this ride through the forgotten corners of Ford's legacy, make sure to smash that like button, subscribe to Top 5 Muscle Cars, and ring the bell so you never miss another story of horsepower, heartbreak, and high-octane history. Which Mustang shocked you the most? Drop your thoughts in the comments, and if you owned one of these, we definitely want to hear your story. Until next time, keep your foot on the gas, your mind on the road, and your eyes open. Because the past has plenty more muscle left to reveal.